This is part 2 of Halftones. What you're going to be doing is you're going to be working on a worksheet showing that you can produce your own halftones using a pen. Now, the ones we're going to choose is either a regular Sharpie like this, or I have some drawing pens like this that are a little bit thinner than the Sharpie. They both work very well. The drawing pens that I have are on my desk in this chocolate container. They're actually inside here like this. And the Sharpies are in my large cabinet. I got a whole drawer full of those. So this is what you're going to do. You're going to show that you can produce halftones. You're going to have a strip here on this worksheet here. You're going to have a strip here that uses lines that fades from black to light gray to, to medium gray to light gray to white. It fades and it fades. That's the key. It doesn't just suddenly stop. So we're going to use what's called lines, crosshatch, squiggles, and dots. Another word for dots is stippling, okay? Now here's an example of one that a student did years ago, Jamie Rose. Here's her example of lines. Now she did a separate sheet of paper. You're doing it on a worksheet. So here's an example of lines. Crosshatch is when lines that are crossing in different directions, sort of like a window screen. Dots is a series of tiny dots, and squiggles is just a series of little scribbly lines. Over here you can see there's a lot of white space. Over here it gets way more condensed, okay? Then on the bottom of the sheet, you're gonna have two spheres, a sphere like this and a sphere here. And you're gonna try to make those look three-dimensional like this sphere. Now, you can choose the method that you like the best. So you're gonna choose two methods. You might say, well, I really like squiggles and I really like dots. So I'm gonna do my one sphere in dots and the other one in squiggles. Someone else might say, I like crosshatch and I like dots or whatever. You pick two of the four that you would like to get better at, okay? So here we go. Couple things, just really quick. As I showed you before, Benjamin Franklin, he's made with a series of lines, dots, and then in his coat here, there's crosshatch, and there's lines up in his hair and crosshatch in the background. So you're gonna choose a method that fits best. Here's another drawing of a children's book, and you see nothing but a series of really heavy lines. Here's one that I did of a dog, and I use lines because it really followed the contours of that dog's fur. But if you look up close, you'll see that his nose was done with tiny little dashes, and his eye was done a little differently too. Now here's a drawing that I did for what is now the pond in Slinger. And years ago, before they built the pond, they asked me to do a little drawing, and they didn't tell me what it was going to look like, so I did my little version of what it might look like. So I use a series of methods. So here, you can see I use lines to make the little waves of water. In the sandy areas, I use little dots to make more of a sandy grain. Little lines or dashes to make the grass. I use squiggles up here in the tree area. Okay, so I use a series of methods that I thought best fit with the texture that I was trying to imitate. So this is what you're gonna do. So what you're gonna do, you're gonna start with lines. So in here, you're gonna start putting a series of lines right next to each other. Now what I normally do is I have the lines fairly close, and then as I cross the paper, I start spreading them a little bit further and further and further apart. Now when you do this, when you look at it from a distance sometimes, you can tell, does that fade? Right now mine is kind of dark and then all of a sudden it's just light. So I need to go back in here and put more lines that are closer together so it becomes darker, and I'm gonna overlap more lines in here. So I want to get this a gradual fade. In order to know if you're doing this right, what you need to do is once in a while, you need to just step back and look at this from a distance. Because from a distance, you're gonna get that visual blend, and you're gonna be able to say, does this fade from white to gray to black? So you're gonna do that using a series of lines. I can see on mine, I need more lines in here to really fill that in and make it darker on this end, maybe even more, hardly any white at all over here, and I'm using a series of lines. Next is crosshatch. Crosshatch is just basically a series of lines like this that are close to each other, and as I start going further down the paper, they're gonna start to get a little bit further apart. Now with crosshatch, it's like a window screen. In a window screen, you get lines that are crossing in different directions. So I'm gonna turn my paper now, and I'm gonna do a diagonal this way. So here, the lines are very close. There's not much white showing now, so that's gonna become darker because I've got a lot more lines over the top of this. So this is called crosshatch, okay? And you might even go with a third direction of lines. Got the idea? And obviously my demonstration is really fast. I want you to do a little better job than I'm doing. Squiggles. Squiggles is just a series of little scribbly lines. Now here, the lines will be further apart. Now the key is I want you to keep them inside this rectangular box. So try to keep it inside the box. If you want to, you could tape a little piece of paper on either side of the box so that you don't venture out of the box. So what I'm going to do here, the lines become very condensed and squiggled. I suppose think of it like this is like black spaghetti. If I was to throw spaghetti on the floor and I had a big pile of spaghetti here that was black, you wouldn't see the floor at all. And over here you'd see the floor start coming through. I know it's kind of a weird analogy, but it's like drawing black spaghetti that's been thrown all over the floor. So that's squiggles. Okay, like that. And last is dots. Now dots, you just got a series of dots that are next to each other. Now you're gonna have the tendency to want to be like a woodpecker and start pounding your tip. Don't do that, okay, because you'll wreck the pen. So it's just a series of dots that is built up. Okay, dots is the most time consuming, but I think looks the best. So then what you're gonna do is just like on the back of this sheet, I have a sample. So you're going to do just like this. Should have sort of a crescent moon shape to it, okay? So you're going to choose a light source. On here you might choose either B or A for your light source. If A is here, that means this side of the sphere is lighter and this starts to get darker. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to put your name on this sheet, okay? And then what you're going to do is you're going to complete the 4 different halftones, 2 different halftones on a sphere up here, okay? And then you're gonna take your watercolor sheet with the apples, and on 2 of your large apples, you're gonna do the same thing here by putting pen over the top of your watercolors. That's your assignment. We'll get going on that pronto.